Okay, now in this file, you're going to double click and you're going to create the file, click test document, don't click anything else. Click it as, make the file data types.py. Remember, you need to put the py, and I'll explain why in this class. Data types.py. There. Okay. Say yes if this question pops up. Oh, wait a second. This won't ask me a question, but if it does, right click and say open with notepad. Okay. So, you might be asking, Joshua, why did you name your folder data types? Well, today I'm going to be talking to you through all of the data types in Python. The first one I would like to talk to you, which I touched a bit upon in our first class, is strings and integers. What is a string? Well, like I'm talking to you right now, a string is how Python takes in values that we speak out loud. Okay, I'm not sure if you get that, but here. Do you remember in our last class when we wrote Hello World? That was our first string. Hello World is a string as it is inside those double quotations. However, anything can be inside those double quotations and you can say it is a string. The only qualification you need for a piece of code to be a string is to have the double quotations surrounding it either sides. I believe that the strings convert the piece of code inside to what the humans normally speak. You can put your name. You can even put a number. These are all strings. Okay. Now, time to talk to you about integers. Now, this is fairly simple. An integer is just a number. All of these are integers. But wasn't this a number? These are numbers too. But why is this called an integer and this called a string? It doesn't matter what is in the double quotations, because if it is in the double quotations, it's classified as a string. In this case, if you took out the double quotations from 5, it would be classified as an integer. But as we did put the double quotations, it would be classified as a string. I hope you understand the strings and integers. Remember, you can always paste questions in the comments. Now time to move on to more complicated data types. Okay, pause this video and think, what in the world is a float? Okay, a float is a decimal number. I know, it's really weird. It's a really weird name for a decimal number, but still. If it has a decimal point and 323232, let's say, that is a float as it is a decimal number. So all decimals can be classified as floats. There. Now, this is going to be our last data type for the day. when I would like to move on to a new topic on data types. So the last data type I'll be talking about today is Booleans. What's the Boolean? Well, a Boolean is one of the data types that have two values, true and false. Booleans are a nice, reliable data type that you can use in many programs, especially when you are using variables, which I'll talk about soon. The only values of a Boolean I know are true and false. Okay, now we're going to delete all of this, so please note this down if you have a notebook, or take note of it in your head. Now I'd like to talk to you about how you convert one data type into another. Now this works for a very, very few data types. I've never heard of one that converts something into booleans, but I know how to convert it into integers and strings, and a little bit of how to convert them into floats. So, how do you convert a string into an integer? Okay, copy what I do here. Okay, this is not going to be a proper code. We're not going to run it. Because for me to run it, first I need to tell you about variables, which I can't right now, because you need to learn more things before I teach you about variables. Okay, so input, let's say you enter your number. Okay, you enter your number, let's say as 5. You put 5 inside. And then you say, you want to convert it into an integer. Something that we will use very, very, very often is to convert the first input into an integer. This is how you do it. Then, input is a built-in function like print from last class. A built-in function for Python. So, input is a very exciting part of Python. It interacts with the user, asking a question to a user and taking in an input. So, when in this question, when it takes in the input, it's going to make sure it's an integer. However, if you don't enter integer, Python will give you an error saying integer, giving an error as it was supposed to be integer, but you gave it as a string or boolean or float. Okay, now it's time to talk about variables. Okay, so close this. Let's see, it's fine. We will be doing a program in here later. So you can name this file whatever you want to name, but I would suggest the name as variables.py. Say yes to this question when it pops up. Double click. So don't double click. Open with Notepad. Don't open with Python. Always open with Notepad. Until I tell you not to. Okay. Now, many of you who haven't had any coding experience before might have at least heard of the word variable. Let me explain in greater depth what it means. A variable is just a name with a value assigned to it. So, for example, let's say you have a variable food. And let's say you set it to your favorite food. There. Macaroni and cheese. This is the variable. In this case, food is a variable. Equal sign, in Python, an equal sign is something that assigns the first value to the second value. So in this case, equal sign is attaching food, assigning food to the value of macaroni and cheese. Equal sign is not how we normally use it as we speak or in math in Python. So, now this might sound crazy, and you might love the idea of this, because we have the complete freedom of doing whatever variable or putting a name to whatever variable we want. So, let me give you an example. You can even name this. You can even name a variable that, and it still would work. It doesn't matter what name you give to it, but that's where the programmers have to be careful. Okay. Now, here are the few rules of variables. A variable, the first letter or the first character of a variable can never be uppercase. Never create a variable like that. If you want to include capital letters in your variable, I would suggest to do it as table casing. If you want to. Like that. So remember, always be careful when you're using a variable. Choose names that aren't so complicated but describe what the variable is holding. Make sure you choose your variables carefully and your variables are very, very descriptive. This is important because let's say somebody who doesn't know anything about Python comes along and says, I want to try and see if I can understand your code. Just by looking at the variable, they should know what that variable is holding and a vague idea of what the program is about. But if you put as your variable, I don't think they would understand what you're trying to say.